Here we go. I just wanted to say thank you so much, Abby Edmonds, for joining me this evening on Aaron's Opinion. My first question, as I ask any guest from anywhere in the world, and we'll just dive into the conversation from here. You can take this any way you want. Who is Abby Edmonds? Go right ahead.
Well, thank you, Aaron, for having me on this show. I am super excited.
Always welcome.
Thank you. A few weeks ago, you had my sister, Nikki Edmonds, on.
Well, I know about that. I asked about you. Who's Abby Edmonds?
Well, she's my sister. So that's
I know. I just got to give you a hard time. I know.
So I am the ninth of my parents' 11 children. I am a special education teacher. I have my master's in early childhood special education. I am from the beautiful island of St. Lucia. I love to sing. I love to ride. I love to sleep. What else about me? I'm the most boring person you'll ever meet. But maybe as we continue speaking, I might discover some things about myself that I didn't know.
You will.
Yeah.
So, Nikki lives in Lucia, but you do not. Do you want to tell us what country you're living in?
I am currently in the United States.
Yes, you are.
New York City.
You are indeed. Okay. So, first of all, how did you end up in New York City?
Well, my plan was I graduated from high school in St. Lucia at the age of 16. And my plan was to take a year off and then go back to teachers training college and become a teacher. But I guess God had other plans for me. I ended up coming here for my brother's wedding and I never left. So that's pretty much how I ended up here.
Interesting. Okay, good. So let's really philosophize, because there's a lot of ways. When you say that you got into education, first of all, did you always, well, actually, before I say that, let's talk about what special education is. Let's imagine that you're listening or watching us right now and you have no idea what special education is. So, Abby, what is special education? Let's start there.
Well, from my understanding, special education is, I guess it's like a program or just something that was designed to help students who are struggling. So let's say you're a general education teacher and you have 30 children in your class. And you see that when you're teaching the standards and the skills, you have your objective, your lesson is going great. And you walk around the classroom and you see consistently that there are students who are struggling to grasp whatever concept it is, even with different remediations, differentiation, they're unable to grasp the concepts. Special education is tiered. So as a teacher, you will try to find ways to help that student. And if that's not working, then there will be different steps where you can speak to the parents and have the child evaluated by a psychologist. And then there's this whole process of testing that is done. Then if the child is deemed a candidate, I guess, if they're based on their scores, they will be classified with a disability. Whether it's, mostly cognitive disabilities. And then there will be someone like me, who's a special education teacher, who will come in and I will work with that child or these children, probably in small groups. Again, everything is going to be set up where they'll tell you what setting the child best is suited for, where the child will be able to learn better. You could have a 12 to 1 to 1. You could have a 15 to 1. So it's very, very broad, the whole special education spectrum. And I work with an agency now. So I do one-on-one with my students, 1 hour a day. I have 8 students. So I do 1 hour a day for 8 hours, 5 hours a week. And it depends on the child's mandate. So I work with them. I look at where their deficiencies are, and I also look at their strengths. So I could use their strengths to help build and help them to get to where they need to be. And I'm very big on scaffolding where you are, where I want you to be, and what I can do to help get you there. I look at the trajectory of the following grades. I've taught first grade, third grade, fourth grade. So I kind of know the elementary curriculum pretty good. So I could see the trajectory. Okay, these are the standards that that child needs to hit. And what are the things I, as a special education teacher, can do to get them to where they need to be. And then we have long-term goals, we have short-term goals, and then we just work with them consistently, just focusing on these goals and what the child can do, not trying to frustrate them, because that's another level of, if they cannot do it, like literally cannot do it, forcing them is just going to make them retreat. So you have to really know your students. And I love my job because it's very intimate. I get to know my students one-on-one. I could see like exponential growth because I'm so focused on these children as opposed to having a whole class of 30 kids. So I hope that kind of helps just get a...
Absolutely it does. What do you know about the history of special education? At what point in America's history, or the world's history even, did special education arise as a specific discipline for you to study? Historically, what do you know about it?
That was in my undergrad. That's years ago, Aaron. You're bringing me all the way back. But I know it's very recent that institutions, right, the whole IDEA was founded, which is the Individualized Disability Education Act, where children were able to go into schools as opposed to being institutionalized. And it was not that long ago that children who had special needs, whether it was physical or cognitive, were taken from their homes. So some of the parents would voluntarily take their child to an institution. And there's the idea of my child being integrated into the public school system or the private. It was not even a thing. It was just never like nobody visualized that and said, oh, my child could be a part of the school system. It was just so separate. It was isolated. These kids were marginalized, polarized. And I guess in recent history, as much as we think, oh, this has been around for a while. No, it took a long time. And there's still a lot that needs to be done. So we have a long way to go.
Excellent. Beautiful response. I was hoping you were going to go for that response. That was perfect. I love that.
Thank you.
So really, when you were studying in your undergrad, what turned you on to special education? What made you, Abby, realize that that's your calling to be a special education teacher?
Well, I started off being a nanny or a babysitter. And I remember one of the first jobs I had, the children that I was looking after, he had a disability called Fragile X. And he was nonverbal. So we just connected on a level where it was just so uncanny, where I could understand everything he wanted and needed without him having to say a word to me. And I mean, that was just so powerful. And I remember when the speech pathologist would come to the house, they would try all different techniques with him. And because of my bond with him, I was able to get him to say, Abby. Like he pronounced my name, and his mom was blown away. She's like, Abby, you need to be a speech pathologist. You need to look at what you just did. And I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. So trying speech, I was like, okay, I'll try it. But along the way, just based on the program, I went to Brooklyn College. They were only letting us do 2 or 3 classes per semester because they said it was so challenging, that program. And I was like, I don't want to be in school for the rest of my life. So I switched to early childhood education. And then I focused on special education. And then I had another degree. So I did a dual degree in children and youth studies. So I guess just my experiences. And what I've noticed is that with special education, there's not really anything that deals with the physical disabilities. It's very much more cognitive, that most of my students have cognitive disabilities. So,
and I think that's interesting because when we look at, the ADA, which definitely needs an overhaul, as I'm sure you've learned to know,
yes.
The ADA has done a lot to help people access physical buildings, with wheelchair ramps, and those are wonderful. But the ADA, in my opinion, and other blind peoples around the country and the states here seem to agree that the ADA hasn't done enough when it comes to successfully integrating blind people into the workforce. And this is such an important topic to talk about. You're very right, by the way.
Mhm.
children with disabilities were institutionalized even in the 1990s,
Mhm.
until some major institutions were shut down in the 1990s, and then we stopped doing it. But uh, parents were willing to do that for a very long time, actually. Yeah, it's very interesting. Um, so, what can you tell me about this particular, if you can and if you would like, what can you tell me about, the school system up in New York, and then this particular, you said you're working for an agency. So, is it a company? Tell, if you're able, tell us a little bit more about
Yeah, sure. So I started off, I used to volunteer at daycare centers when I was doing my undergraduation. The way it is with teaching, you have to have a certain amount of hours in a classroom. So you have to do that in tandem with your classes. So I would volunteer at daycare centers or like what we call CBOs, community based organizations. And in New York, the mayor did a whole big campaign to do UPK, which is Universal Pre-K. And now we have 3K, Universal 3K. So children who are 3 years old and 4 years old can go into schools or these community-based organizations. And some schools do have those housed in their schools. So I was volunteering there. Then I moved into the DOE as a substitute teacher while I was in my undergrad. And I've seen a lot, I've been in a lot of different schools in DOE, Department of Education in New York. And then I moved into a charter school. I worked there for 3 years as a lead teacher. And now I shifted to this agency. So it's a very small agency. And basically what we do is we are called SETS providers, so Special Education Teacher Support Services providers. So we go into the schools, usually it's just one school, and we work with students. So since my license and my degrees are in early childhood, I could only work up to a certain age. So I do work with the younger ones. And so what we do, we come in, we get the children's IEP or IESP, which is the Individualized Education Service Plan, or the Individualized Education Plan. And on there, we'll see all their goals. And as service providers, what we do, at the beginning, I just observe and I look at the children's work that they produce. And I say, okay, this is where I see the gaps. Okay, and my job is to fill in the gaps with remedial work, with differentiation, and just a lot of, support for this.
Good, wonderful. I really appreciate what you're doing. That's so good. That's so good.
So
So, yeah, you mentioned that you are only working with mostly children with cognitive disabilities. But so, have you encountered any blind students though over the years?
it's so, and that's the thing. That's the mystery. In all the schools I've been in all the different settings, I've never seen a blind child in a school. The closest I've seen, I'm going to be honest about that, there was one student at one of the charter schools that I worked with who was visually impaired. And what we do, we have something called collaborative scoring, where when they take the interim assessments, all teachers, we do like group score, right? We all take up some booklets and we score and score. And then I saw this huge book. I'm like, oh, they did that for my brothers and them. It's called, right, the enlarged print. And that was like one of the closest I've seen to a child who was visual. Like there was one visually impaired child, and that was it. So I'm like, I know there are children who are blind. I know there are children who are in wheelchairs. I know there are children.
Yeah. I'm wondering, I'm kind of, that's, does it seem, do you think it's unusual that you have not encountered a blind student? Let me just ask it that way.
I think it is extremely unusual. So The reason why I said that, I'm from St. Lucia, like I said.
Right, yeah.
There's 180,000 people in St. Lucia. Now, back then when I was growing up, it was way less, like 170-something thousand. And I have 5 brothers and 2 sisters who are visually impaired. So that's 7 children you would find in the school system, because My mom was very adamant, even though my dad had he was one of the founders for the School for the Blind in St. Lucia. I'm sure remember Nikki's story of having to go to Trinidad and Tobago for boarding school because
Yes,
they
yes. I do vaguely remember that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So my mom was like, wait, my children cognitively they're fine. And my brothers and sisters are geniuses. They're super intellectual, right? And why would they have to be subjected to or like confined to the School for the Blind learning Braille when they could read, right? Make the print bigger, they bring it closer to their eyes, and they could read it. And they're so smart. They could read. They know math. They like. Why would we want to put them in that box and say you need to go to a specialized school because you're blind, and public schools and private schools are for children who are quote unquote normal? So I'm wondering, where are those children who they're fine cognitively, but they're blind, or they're fine cognitively and they're in wheelchairs, they're fine cognitively and they're, so I know New York City has a lot of specialized schools. So I don't know if that's where the parents send the children.
I'm already suspicious. I think I know. Maybe in New York, the parents are encouraged to send their blind children to schools for the blind.
Which is sad.
Which doesn't really make, well, to be fair, since I personally don't know that, to be fair about it, we don't know that, but that's what it sounds like to me, is that could be going on. That's a possibility.
Let me just say, I've seen a lot of people who are blind in college settings,
right,
as opposed to elementary, middle, and high school. So again, I need to look into that because I've been
something even still though, I would say, and I'm only, this is an opinion show. My opinion is that doesn't sound, I know that you're right in what you're the one that's correct in what you're saying. I'm not discounting you, but something's not, that fact doesn't make, that doesn't make sense to me. So something's a little off about that. But look, and another interesting thing that I observed, and I've observed it with Nikki and other blind people too, is that not all blind people have enough vision to read print. Nikki does, but I cannot. So there is a tremendous, as you have mentioned, there's a tremendous spectrum of ability and disability. And it's a huge spectrum. Yeah.
Yes. My dad cannot read print, so he writes and reads in Braille.
Right. Yeah. My estimation would be if a student is able to read large print, to me they aren't really.
Don't say it.
I don't know. I don't know because.
So let's talk about
this. Okay.
Visually impaired.
Right.
Blind.
Right.
Two different disabilities, two different sets of abilities. Yes?
Sort of.
So your ability would be to read Braille, their ability would be to read large print.
Right.
But the disability is reading normal print without having any supplemental resources. Right?
Right.
So if I'm a principal and there's a blind child and a child who's visually impaired, I'm thinking, well, there are things that we have to put in place to accommodate both of them. And that's where equity comes in, right?
Right.
You need what you need to succeed, and that child needs what they need to succeed. So what are the things we need to do and put in place to help that child be successful with their, inability or disability? I don't like using these words. It's very, but you understand what I'm trying to say.
Sure. So let me explain how I philosophize.
Yes, please do.
Sure. So I have usable vision, as you can tell.
Yes.
But I call myself blind because here's the other thing that's really interesting is I don't like, and it's fine that we're saying it. I just don't, philosophically, I don't use the term visually impaired.
Okay.
Because blindness, to me, in my philosophy, is not an impairment. It doesn't. It is not inhibiting my, ability to do things. Right. So I still say that I'm blind because I am. and
Mm-hmm.
I'm, comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
Other blind people around the community would say they're visually impaired or something like that. And to me, I'm a very, I'm not going to beat around the bush about it. I'm a black and white thinker, either hot, cold, up, down, you know,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
either the beer is perfect or it's gone flat. There's, to me,
It's very binary. It's like this or that. Okay.
okay, thank you. I would say philosophically that excellent. Thank you for giving me that. I don't good. I would say that I am a very binary thinker, I guess, philosophically. So you see,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of get it when blind people, as we say, are using their vision to read print. However, here's a little bit more about my story.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll certainly off air and offline later, I'll send you the article a little later so you can learn more about my background and what happened when I was a little boy. And everybody has a story. I have one. But
Okay.
I was taught from a very young age that if you're a blind person, it's in my opinion and my parents' opinion, it's not acceptable to read print because that's something that blind people don't do. Blind people use Braille. Now, I realize that today, with more and more technology and more ways of adapting materials, it has become, more and more acceptable for blind people to read print. But of course, philosophically, I still struggle to understand it because I don't have enough vision to read print.
Mm-hmm.
So I always wonder, like, how does Nikki do it? How do these people do it?
Mm-hmm.
If you have that bad of vision in the first place, how do you use your vision that much to read print? Like, everybody's eyes are different. So that's just my opinion and my philosophy about it. But yeah, it kind of does weird me out though when blind people, read print,
Yeah. So, I mean, okay. So I think I'm ignorant to the whole terminology.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Because for me, visually impaired means that you see so specific with, it's not just the word impairment standing alone. It's like there's this noun and then there's this like adjective attached. I don't know how to
Well,
call it.
let's break it down. So we have vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ability for us to see that's our vision. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I see the screen, I see colors, I see my red shirt,
Yes.
Things like that, right? Okay, so that's vision.
Yes.
I can say the sentence visually. I feel that I do not have enough usable vision to open up another tab and start reading an article for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the difference between vision and visually to me. But by the way, this is an opinion show, and what I'm saying to you are not I'm not giving you facts. I'm giving you my opinions.
Yeah.
So it's really weird, but every blind person kind of mulls this over and eats this every blind person has their meal differently, and to me, that's just what, that's just how I perceive it. So visually is a adjective. It's the way I actually view it in this case. If you're going to talk about the word impaired, it's interesting because visually in a grammatical sense, and if guys out there, if I'm wrong about this, let me know. It's okay. But I think visually would actually be, in a sense, modifying, grammatically speaking, in a philosophical sense, modifying impaired. Also interesting. Impair is the inability to do something, but interestingly, we always say it in the past tense, impaired, with the assumption that in the future, we will have more vision. And for me, my vision is stable for what it is. So that's how I am. So that's why I'm blind. Okay. Because
I understand.
so that's now, okay. Now blindness. No. Because we have to completely explain the whole equation. Now, blind is when you are unable to see anything.
Okay.
That would be blind. People, by the way, who are totally blind, although you might think as a sighted person that it's black or it's dark, it's not. It's an absence of the sense of sight. So blindness means you are unable to see.
Mm-hmm.
Vision, so we have vision, which is the ability to see the world in front of us or around us. Visually describes what we see.
Mm-hmm.
Impair is the inability to do something. Impaired in the past implies that we were unable to do something in the past and that we'll be able to do it in the future. Blind is the inability, is when you are unable to see anything, and the sight and the sense of sight is absent. There you go. So that is why, okay, so that is why I'm blind, okay, because it's easier this way. That's why I'm blind, because I am. Over to you. Go ahead. So what did that, so as a sighted person, what did I just tell you? And like, how do you interpret what my philosophy and what I just said?
I'm blown away because, again, for me, I never understood. Well, I never saw my siblings as blind because I knew that they had some form of ability to see. It wouldn't be as clear as my vision. It wouldn't be as clear as my mom's or my other siblings. But I knew that with, again, supplemental resources, the print being bigger, putting the book, if it's fine print, they'll put the book really close to their eyes. Their glasses were super thick. The prescription was stronger. So all of these were things that they had to find to help them read. So again, to me, blind was when your vision is absolutely gone. There's no way you could read or see what's in front of you. But with my siblings, we'd be walking. There's a pole. They'll, go around it. Yes. So they're reading their books in regular fine print. They just have to put it really close to their eyes and use their glasses, and they read really well with that. That was their technique or their way of reading. So I never thought of them as blind, right? I always thought their vision was, and again, to me, the word impaired, it doesn't mean like the inability. It just means that it's kind of, I want to be politically correct.
No, this is not a politically correct show. This is for adults only. So the point of this show is it's supposed to be inappropriate and educational. So no, do not be politically correct with me. No. I want you to be as blunt and as you
be raw with my words. Don't sugarcoat anything. Just say what
I'm not sugarcoating anything.
I can tell. Yeah. So when I think of the word impaired, it means that like something can be done, but there's something preventing it from happening fully. Like is the absence of something being able to be done at its highest level, but it's being done, but just not at its full potential. You know what I mean? So when I say impaired, yeah, your vision, it's not at its full potential, but there's some ability. Do you understand? That's how I saw it. So when I said visually impaired with my siblings, it means they cannot see as good as I can. They're not blind, but they have the ability to still read and do other things, but it's not at its full potential. So
right. And I think the other factor is too, like the generational things. You're older. I'm 30 years old, so you're older than me, and
yes.
so is Nikki, and so are Wait, what are all the ages of your?
Well, my youngest sister, I think she's 31.
Okay, so the youngest one would be someone around my age. Okay,
yes.
So even still, I mean, I think a lot of it too has to do with the fact that I grew up. I mean, I hate to disappoint you. Let me just disappoint you. Life is not fair. And as you know, I've been to Lucia. I volunteered there for 6 weeks years ago, and I absolutely love everything about Lucia. It's wonderful. Love it. But still, the sad truth is, if you're born in Lucia, you have significant challenges.
Yes.
And it's not right. It's not fair, but that's the world. Whereas in my case, I was born in Washington, D.C. To parents who were determined to educate me regardless of the system. And so they taught me at a very young age as a little boy, blind people don't read print, you read Braille, or maybe you listen, but it's again, it's about what people consider to be socially socially acceptable. In certain parts of the world, it's acceptable for blind people to use their usable vision to read something in print. Whereas I was taught in America, well, no, you're blind. We're glad you can see, but you still need to use Braille. That was kind of the philosophy. Yeah.
And I think my mom went against the status quo, right? Because I think, Daddy, if you're watching this, I'm sorry if I am okay. I think my mom's philosophy was, no, my kids are not going to read Braille. They're going to go into the public school and they will read like the regular child, take the regular exams, and go to high school like regular children. And that's what she adamantly wanted, and that's what happened. All of my siblings who are visually impaired, they were integrated into the public school system. That's when they left. My three oldest siblings, when they were not going to boarding school anymore, they were put into public school. And yes, it was challenging, because I remember my brother telling me that when he went to sit when he had to go take one of the exams, they didn't even have the print blown up for him, so he ended up not being able to take that part of the exam, and he had to repeat the last year of high school. But I say this to say, it sounds like it's a personal choice for the parents and how they want their children to handle their disabilities. So again, your parents said, hey, no, you're reading Braille. My mom said, oh no, it's no Braille over here. You're going to public school and you will learn to.
Right. No, and you know what? And that's a very interesting thing to also philosophize about that, right? How the education structure of the country impacts the way that a parent would approach education. Sure, of course. Mm-hmm. The system in Lucia at that time would have definitely not been ready to accept Braille in the system. Definitely.
No, absolutely. No.
Not at that time.
Yeah, if you wanted to do Braille, you would have to go to the school for the blind, and you'd have to deal with who was their father? My dad was the principal. So, I'm going to say it, none of my siblings could read Braille. And my dad is an avid reader. He has an entire library just full of Braille books. He still has his Braille typewriter, and none of my siblings could read Braille. And I feel like that's the same thing with the deaf community, right? Where with the whole argument about cochlear implants and not having cochlear implants. Mm-hmm. So I feel like every community has its what's acceptable and what's not. Let's do this.
Sort of. Let's just deal with the vision. Okay, let's just deal with the blind thing. Okay. because then that gets out of control. Then we have to start talking about
in my book that I wrote, I addressed. Well, we'll talk about that in a little.
No. Let's go back. No. That was good. No, okay. If you wrote about that in a book, I want to hear more about that. So, if you wrote a book where you talk about both blindness and deaf mm-hmm. people, what did you? How did you approach that? How did that come up in your book? That's really important.
So I'm just holding it up on.
Sure. Yeah.
So this is my children's book I wrote. It's called "I Can Just Not Like You." Okay. Mm-hmm. So it just highlights what I feel is the invisible. Remember, I was asking, where are they? Like, where are these children in New York City? I can't seem to find them. So I thought I would shine a light on, children with disabilities and how other children can learn. Okay. Because I feel like dealing with children with disabilities for other children who have never encountered them is something that has to be taught explicitly. Because I know that a lot of children, they're not tactful, they don't have filters, they don't have the right vernacular or verbiage. So I feel like this book that I wrote, it's like an educational resource where, there are 3 characters. There's a little girl, and all of them are based on my nephew and my nieces. So their disabilities does not reflect, if they have or do not have a disability in real life, but I still use that to depict in the book. So I have a little girl, Sadie, she's blind. There's the little boy named Adam, he's in a wheelchair. And then there's this little girl named Saray, who is deaf. So it's a very cute book. I've gotten so much good feedback on it. And my goal is to have it in every single school, library, because I feel like it's so important for us to start a conversation, for kids to understand, hey, even if they look differently, there's so many things we have in common, and we can still be friends and get along. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the more we're digging into the meat and potatoes here,
Mm-hmm.
the more I'm interested in how you interpret things. You started out by saying you started out with the blindness, and then you mentioned deaf, and then I started to steer the ship a little bit, but then you said, well, here's how I think about it, and then you put them all together in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I think that on one hand, I think that's beautiful. Thank you for writing your book. We can definitely, when you write your description, your abstract, you definitely should give me a link to that book so that parents can learn more about it. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
However,
just give it. Just rip the band.
We in the blindness community, we do not. It's not a matter of do not like. It's just a matter of we only address or I address
mm-hmm.
one disability at a time, because
mm-hmm.
the reasoning is, and it's been philosophized about. Well, let me explain it to you like this. There's a lot of Facebook groups for blind people.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them say vision impaired. I don't really know why they say that, because they're blind people. Okay. Anyway, but apparently, I know why. So that the blind people can join the blind group on Facebook, but the visually impaired people who are also blind can join a visually impaired group on Facebook. Okay, so we do have to be completely politically incorrect and fair to say that there is a tremendous spectrum of
mm-hmm.
how people. I mean, I basically had to give you a little bit of my opinion about
yes.
how I view blindness, right? Mm-hmm. So we're both on a spectrum together. You're a sighted person. I'm a blind person. We were both talking about blindness in totally different ways.
Yes.
From what I've heard from mm-hmm. the deaf community, and if deaf people are watching what we're saying here on Aaron's Opinion, if you turn on the closed CC, the closed captioning, I believe it's called, and you're watching this, let me know what you think. Comment below and let me know what you think. But I've heard, and I don't know this to be true, but I've heard a rumor that deaf people feel perhaps that there is less of a spectrum or no spectrum at all, meaning either the person cannot hear or they can hear. I'm not deaf, so I don't know one way or the other. It's a very interesting thing. So there are spectrums that you have to be very, I would say, in my estimation, cognizant of,
mm-hmm.
of that type of thing. Also, too, the wheelchair. Thank you for including someone in a wheelchair. Great. And at the same time, the wheelchair impacts, I think, this is my opinion from a blind person's perspective, is that the wheelchair impacts the person's physical movement. It's a thing that impacts their ability to move around. But of course, not really, because the wheelchair has an engine and they can go wherever they want to go, and it's not an issue. But I see that the blindness impacts more, in my opinion, the blindness impacts more things, from social skills, how we interact, getting jobs. I think it impacts perhaps a wider range of things. I guarantee there's going to be people that are going to disagree with me. And if you do, please disagree. Yeah.
I would not go as far as saying it impacts you differently, because that's the situation you're in, right? That's something that's permanent. That's something that you have to deal with. That's something that you have to find ways to maneuver around. New York City, yes, they're doing better, but there's some subways that have no elevators. You have to go to work. How do you get around? You don't have a car, because they're really telling us don't get cars, use public transportation. But if it's not accessible, there's still a lot of buildings that have no ramps. There's still a lot of schools that don't have any ramps. So are they really paying attention to somebody when they're designing their buildings? And do they have the idea of, hey, let's design that for the 40 people who are in wheelchairs who will be working here? Probably not. So that's something that they have to try to figure out.
Sure.
So in saying that there's more that you have to deal with instead of the social, I don't think that's a fair statement because, again, you're dealing with your situation and they're dealing with their situation, and they might see it as your situation as dire as theirs because they're the ones who have to come up with the solutions for their problems that they're facing on a day-to-day basis, just like you do. So I feel like if we're juxtaposing, we have to be fair, right?
Sure.
In thinking, hey, my situation might be more challenging than somebody else's, but we're not in that situation. The same way I cannot speak of your experiences because I am not blind.
Right.
Not really fair to speak on somebody who's in a wheelchair and what struggles they go through on a daily basis. Okay?
Oh, sure. No. And that's ridiculous. That's to not have accessible buildings with ramps in this day and age is just unnecessarily completely ridiculous. I don't understand how we can be in this year and time and age without perfectly accessible buildings for all people. I don't know. That's again, like we were saying before about where are all these blind children. That's another weird thing. That's another mystery.
Right. Where are the ramps? And that's what I said in one of my books. One of the boy in the book, he said, I'm going to read the page for you. He said,
sure.
1 second. So he says, sometimes it's tricky to get around or up and down the stairs, but I hope that one day soon there will be ramps everywhere. Right. And then I just have this kind of utopian visual of like, there's a ramp right there. There's ramps going down the stairs and he's with his friends. So it just looks like whatever he's imagining, it's there in the illustrations.
Sure. So, yeah. That's a really beautiful illustration. It's a really beautiful way to illustrate the way that young people, go through, solve problems. You just do the best you can. Yeah. I mean, it's, but that is all really good. So have you, the other question that of course is ringing through my mind right now is, so have you been working all through COVID?
Yes. So when COVID hit, I remember it was like in March, I was teaching first grade, and they're like, pack up, we have to leave. We're rushing, getting the kids ready. We're in the auditorium. We don't know what's going on. Send us home. And the next day, we're not coming back into the building. So we had to quickly learn how to use Zoom, how to get the kids their materials to learn. It was a lot. So from 2020, can't remember the years. Everything just seems so blurred.
I know. It's hard to tell, but I think it's 2022. Yeah.
So from 2020 March till June of that year, I taught remotely. And then the summer came. And then from 2020 to 2021, we went back into the building January of 2021. So from January to June, we taught in person. But again, it was up to the parents if they wanted to bring their kids in or if they wanted to keep them home. So we had like the hybrid situation. We had some kids on Zoom, some kids in the classroom, and we were teaching with the computer. So the kids who were at home could still be engaged. It was a lot going on during COVID and teaching. Yeah.
Right. Sure. So what are some observations you made how COVID affected the students with disabilities that you were working with?
Well, I had to get very creative, which means I had to do a lot of PowerPoint presentations, have a lot of visuals, a lot of repetition going on, a lot of at-bats to really, give them the opportunity to keep practicing and trying. And again, I still had small groups. Well, my last year, because in my last year, I was a special education teacher there. The first 2 years, I was a general education teacher. So my small groups that I did with special education, nobody regressed, but the growth that I was expecting, I really didn't see. Because again, it's very hard for kids to be sitting in front of a computer for all these hours. And, some of them will probably just be playing games on one tab and pretend that they're listening to statements. You know that trick?
Yeah,
one of my kids literally, he froze his body. And I'm like, oh, he's frozen. In my mind, I can't call on him. His internet is acting up. but he literally froze himself. I'm like, what is going on with these children? So
what the kid froze? So what, he froze himself just so he could play the video game?
He like when you freeze,
Yeah.
his computer wasn't frozen. He froze his body to make it look like his computer was frozen, so that I wouldn't call on him. But then his brother walked by in the background. I'm like, wait a minute. Could you? No. I was like, Lily.
That's definitely my sense of humor. I love that stuff. That is definitely my sense of humor.
I was like, OMG, these kids, I can't. But
they're getting creative. They're getting creative. Mm-hmm.
Because they would always be like, Miss Edmonds, you're lagging. That was their favorite word. You're lagging.
Right.
Most times I'm in the school and the internet is not the best. So like, Miss Edmonds, you're lagging. So that was just one of the things. That was like the culture of the classroom, right? Somebody's lagging. You can't hear somebody. The speaker is off. They muted the camera. It was just a lot of technical issues. Right. So you took advantage of that.
Yeah. So of course the children, there's all sorts of YouTube videos where the teachers like fall for it and let the children take over the Zoom and let the children be the director, direct the Zoom meetings. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Oh, that's hilarious. Did you find though that because some children are very, very, very tech savvy and very aware of the power of technology. Actually, they probably are not aware of it, but did you find, I guess, did you find that there were any children, any students that truly really flourished more or flourished in a new way that was unexpected to you through the online part of your teaching?
I'm trying to think back at my students. Let's see. I just feel like it had its challenges to the point where, because I was trying so many different things. I would try to, like, if I'm teaching something, I would try to chart in the moment and say, hey guys, I have my chart in the back and I'm writing, and then I'm saying, okay, you need to write this. And then there's this whole thing of, okay, paper's up, and then they try to put it in the screen. I'm like, good job. But am I really seeing that fine print? So I feel for my kids, trying to see the difference between when they were remote and when they came back into the school, it wasn't that much of a difference, honestly.
I understand you. That kind of surprises me, because I would have thought, that's interesting. I would have thought that there would have been the one student, who really surprised you or really did better in that. Do you say, I mean, professionally speaking?
Yeah.
Do you think that there was any student that actually truly did better online, or are they just too young? It's like, I guess what I'm really trying to get at here is, what is it like when you're teaching a child on an online format? Like, how do they perceive the online setting, I guess, is what I want to know.
I mean, for them, it's a lot of because I make my lessons fun, right, interactive. I could do it better in PowerPoint than I can do it in person. So they were enjoying the lessons, like the animations and the transitions, and then things flying, and it was cute, it was fun, it was hip, and there was like a lot of class participation, because you have to go bigger and harder when you're online, because again, they're staring at a screen, and then we're social creatures, we need to be around each other. So a screen between me and them, I had to like really be creative with how I taught, even my voice, my body language, and I would try to encourage them to do the same. Like read it with oomph. Like there were a lot of do it again. It's like, I know you can do better. Let's hear you read that. And again, I would do a lot of challenges. So like the times table challenges, they loved it. Again, it was so quick, because all I'm doing is pressing a button and it just pops up. 3 times 7. Let's go. Oh, your team is losing. Let's go. You got to do quick. So there was just like a lot of finding creative ways for them to be engaged because again, it's a screen and I know it could get boring. So I really try to make it exciting for them. And yeah, so
Did you find one? Well, I think, by the way, I just cannot thank you enough for being a teacher. You're doing a magnificent job. You really are. Did you receive any complete, absolute rejections from any of the parents of these children saying, "Nope, I just refuse to allow my child to participate"? Like, was that even possible? And did you ever have any complete rejection and opposition from parents as it relates to the online?
the good thing is that I'm super big on building relationships, authentic relationships with my parents early in the year.
Mm-hmm.
Even before I started school, even before school started, I was making phone calls to parents. I had already read the children's IEPs, and I was saying, "Hey, can you tell me more about this? Can you tell me more about that? Is there anything else I need to know about your child? What are some of the things that will help them be successful? What are some of your concerns?" So I had already started building those authentic relationships with the families, and by the time the kids came into school, I already known, the parents in a way where I felt like, let's do this. Let's get our kids where they need to be. So no, I didn't get any pushback from any parents in terms of their kids being online, but the parents were having a hard time with the technology. Some because how it was that they were like, they had to go to the general education class, then they'd have to sign out and then come to my class. And sometimes the parents were working and it was just.
In other words, there were different Zoom meetings that the child was supposed to attend each day.
Yeah. Well, the ID and everything, the link was consistent, but they had to no, okay, right now I'm with my regular class, and then I have Miss E's class, and then sometimes the schedule will change, and it would be a lot of, again, communication is so big. I'll be sending texts to the parents and emails. Hey, today I'm not going to be here, or we're going to switch the class. So it was just so much more difficult with the communication as opposed to when you're in the school, after school, you're going to be like, when they come to pick up the kids, you could say, "Hey, so tomorrow I'm not going to be here," or so much easier than, "I hope they got this email, fingers crossed," right? So that part was a little tricky.
Right. Sure. So then,
They were very cooperative.
oh well, that's really wonderful. That's so wonderful. Because I was talking to my parents. My
Mm-hmm.
parents are in their 60s, early 60s. I'm
Mm-hmm.
30, and my brother I have a younger brother who's 24, but we were saying, as a family, we were saying, "Phew, I am so glad you aren't a little kid right now dealing with this online learning, because I wouldn't have." I
Right.
was a very, very stubborn little boy, and I would have definitely not. I probably would have had a lag. I probably would have frozen or something like that. I would have definitely frozen for you. Yeah, I definitely would have given you a hard time, probably as a boy, probably. But but we're so glad that we aren't teaching in that format. But I'm concerned, and I want your honest feedback. Well, everything is honest, obviously, but really, I want your feedback about this. There's a lot of debate in the online teaching community, as I am an online teacher in my day job. We like to think, are our jobs ever going to go away? Do you think, and I always like to say no, but do you think we will ever find a time when education will become just as automated as, say, getting food delivered? What do you think?
At some point, yes. I think teaching, like your child coming to a classroom, is going to be obsolete. I mean, you see so many uh, programs, right? IXL. There's a lot of programs now that focus on homeschooling, where the child doesn't even have to go to school. Like there's so many lessons that are already there. They just have to pace themselves. There's a lot of resources, worksheets. Because I get a lot of my worksheets online, and I'm like, if I can do it, if I'm a parent, it will be so easy to say, nope, you're not going to school. You're going to stay here, and you're going to find all the resources you need online. And then, yeah, it is possible that teaching in the school setting can become obsolete, and even us teaching online because of I already see the different websites and the different things that are being put out there where children could just pace themselves. All the progress reports are there. The work they put in, it could be automatically graded, so you can see the progression. So these things are already there, which is why I say it's possible that this Would it be a good idea? No. But a lot of things that are really bad ideas still come into fruition. So,
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. Yeah.
mhm.
We need to try to work towards a world where, I don't know, we need to set up some good ideas. Because all we've been going through the past couple of years is bad ideas.
I know.
Let's just have a good. How about just? I know it's a lot on society. Really, I know it's tough, but please give me a good idea. I mean, really, But I want to say, and I appreciate your perspective. Really fascinates me. What I tell students is, if a student says, "Aaron, do you think company X will be around forever?" I call it company X when I'm not there and things. I say, yes, I think there will always be the need for a teacher because children and students of the world, regardless of age, deserve and desire, in my estimation, the interaction with a human. That we as people, as, Homo sapiens sapiens, we need interaction.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you that the school setting itself will become obsolete at some point. However, though, I think that more and more people over time might in fact go back to wanting more human interaction. I don't know. We might see that we've lost a lot of ground over the past couple of years, and we need to catch up with our social interaction. I don't know. It could easily go either way, really. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a toss-up, honestly.
Yeah. Well, which direction do you think Lucia will go? St. Lucia.
St. Lucia is so old school, and we're still we follow the British everything because we're colonized by the British. I don't see. Listen, if I walk into my school, my high school, the textbooks that I use, they're still there. So we have made little to no stride. I love St. Lucia. St. Lucians, please don't come for me. Thank you. But that's the same we say back home, like, don't attack me. Don't come for me. So there's so much that needs to be done. Let's not even talk about the special education system in St. Lucia. Like, one of my dreams is to get my PhD because I think I'll be more credible by St. Lucian standards, and just go home, get into the government, the education, system, and just revamp that special education, which is kind of non-existent. It's just starting, but there's so much that needs to be done. So in terms of teachers being absolutely no, kids will go to school for a long time in St. Lucia, a very long time.
Well, guess what?
Don't tell me time is up. Don't say that.
Practically.
No, I was having
practically.
fun.
Practically. I like to keep these just around an hour because the audience, some of those audience people, sometimes when they're listening to the podcast, there's lag problems and the podcast freezes. God, I hate it when that happens. Frozen. That does happen a lot when you listen to this thing. So I always like to end to walk towards a beautiful ending. So first of all, thank you, Abby, for giving me more information about your perspective as a sighted teacher dealing with us people with disabilities. You did it beautifully and in an informed way. And I really enjoyed, I appreciated the fact that you corrected me and you really, held my feet to the fire and you corrected me in a beautiful way earlier. And that's what makes this a beautiful conversation, that you are so knowledgeable and kind about what you do, that you had the strength to do that. And I hope that the audience learns from both of us in this episode. This has been just fascinating to me. But Abby, you're going to love this. You're going to love it. We have a little thing here where just at the end, I'm going to say that this is a special little segment at the end to say, if you can only ask me one question to really make me sweat, to see if I'm really worth my salt as a podcaster, what do you want to ask Aaron Richmond?
Would you ever join a visually impaired group on Facebook?
Yes, because I already have.
That was too easy. come on. You should have prefaced that.
Yes, I am in many visually impaired groups of. Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. What about you? Do you want to join a visually impaired group on Facebook?
Am I allowed to join a visually impaired fit? Am I allowed?
Well, yeah, because you have vision.
Well, I thought it was inclusive to people who are visually.
See, but if you're visually impaired, you have some usable vision. So you can just say, You could say you're visually impaired, but actually I'm sighted. But you can still say you're visually impaired. See how confusing that is, Abby. If someone wants to get in touch with you, if they want to learn more about your book and all the great work you do for the world, apart from clicking the link in the description of this episode, how would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, on Facebook, my name is Abigail Edmonds. It's a public page. You guys can go on there. On Instagram, I'm so embarrassed to say this, Kiki Abby. I'm going to change that, I promise, guys. And you could purchase my book. It's on www.sandcastlebook.com. And the name of the book, again, is called I Can, Just Not Like You.
Absolutely, absolutely beautiful. Abby, I wish you the very best of health. I wish you the very best of health and luck in your life and everything you're doing. Keep up your great work. Keep up your teaching and all of that. And you should definitely get into podcasting yourself and all of that. But as I generally say in the outro, but I'll say it more here on YouTube, I say this more and more. Thanks so much, everybody. That was truly incredible. Thanks so much. Keep up your great work all over the world. And as I like to say here at Aaron's Opinion, do you know what I say?
Tell me. I subscribe to your channel. I did.
Well, we end every episode by saying, thank you, Abby. Help one person today. Help 1 million people tomorrow.
Yes.